Welcome to Whisperwood Stories. Today, we read 3 stories from r/creepyencounters, a subreddit all about encountering creepy people or things. Let's begin. Our first story is from jakebakespancakes. I was around my pre-teens. My mom and I were walking around the mall window shopping. When it soon became her looking at lame adult stuff, I immediately got bored and told her that I'm going to go do my own thing. She said okay, and to meet me at the meeting point later. This is our thing. If we ever go separately, we can meet back at my favorite bookstore. This store is well known and most malls will likely have it, so it's our go-to meeting point. I was looking for a particular book, so I walked around the mall, going to other small bookstores. While riding up the escalator, a guy stood next to me and said, "Hi, miss." I figured he was just making small talk, so I just ignored him. Several minutes later, I rode the escalator again going down, and someone stood next to me and said, louder this time, "Hi, miss." My blood froze. I took a nervous glance at him and I knew that it was the same guy from earlier. He had black hair and a pink shirt. I knew it was no coincidence and he had been following me this whole time, so my first instinct was to go to mine and my mom's meeting point. Upon realizing that I had been going the opposite direction, I did a wide U-turn. I looked to my right, and there, from several meters away, was the strange man. He was indeed following me. He had his eyes on me, so he didn't lose me through a crowd. I speed-walked to the meeting point, avoiding bumping into people. My mom wasn't there yet once I arrived, but I had expected that. We'd agreed with a meeting point, but never discussed a specific time to meet back, so it's usually just me going there early while I wait for her. And that's what I did while this guy was stalking me. I was at the bookstore for quite a while, and I knew that this stranger was in there with me. My panic was replaced with annoyance, the usual annoyance I get when my mom is taking so long doing her own thing, and annoyance at this stranger following me. At one point when I was pretending to read a book, he walked past me, and I gave him a death glare. There I was, all alone with nothing on me, no bag, no phone. I was an easy target, but this guy was doing the kidnapping thing quite poorly. He made the mistake of getting close enough to me that I could profile him. It was a weekend, so the mall was very crowded, and there's always mall security nearby, so I knew that he couldn't do anything. He was likely profiling me, seeing if I was with someone or waiting for me to go home by myself so he could jump me. So I stayed where I was. Knowing that I wasn't in any immediate danger, I got so invested in the book that I actually forgot about my current situation. My instinct told me to look up, and I saw this stranger leaving the bookstore in a hurry, still looking at me. He was probably off to tell his buddy that this kidnapping thing wasn't going very well. When my mom finally showed up, the first thing that she said was, "Want to go eat?" When she linked her arm around mine, I knew I was finally safe. For the remainder of our time in the mall, I kept looking to see if this stranger was still following me, but I never saw him again. I never told my mom or anyone about this until now. Every time I look back, I just think, that happened. My family and I still frequently go to that mall, and it's one of our favorite places. But a few times I stop and look around to see if there's still horrible adults preying on defenseless children. Our second story is from Spooninthewild. For the sake of privacy, I have changed my friends' names for this encounter. Many years back, when I was around 14 years old, a good friend and I encountered a man in a brown suit. We had snuck out to go exploring late at night. Terrible idea, I know. When we were walking through the field of a school at around 3 in the morning. We were just chatting and walking when we saw a man stand up from one of the picnic tables off in the distance. At this point, we started talking quieter and just kept moving. This is when he stepped into the lighted area near the tables, maybe 20 or 30 feet away. We could see he was wearing what appeared to be a classic-looking brown suit. He was carrying the kind of brown briefcase you'd see someone carry onto a plane. He looked like a businessman from an old movie. I can't vividly remember his face, but here's what I do remember. He reminded me eerily of the D.B. Cooper sketches. Long face, pointy chin, high eyebrows, but big and emotionless eyes. Even then, that description isn't quite right. He also had high eyebrows and black hair sleeked back. He walked towards us and stopped maybe 5 feet away. He stood tall, almost lanky in stature, and his eyes were almost bug-like. "I know what you want, Ricky," he said in a blank, monotone voice. My friend and I looked at each other, confused. Neither of us had any idea who this man was. My friend spoke up and started to say, "What?" when the man cut him off and the tone changed. "I know what you want," he said again. We stood there, unsure of what to do when the man said, "I'll see you soon," before he turned and left without saying another word. The area he turned and walked towards would have led him into the wooded area beside the school. This wasn't any sort of business area, so the suit was odd. I have no idea who he was, but when I recall his face, he did look oddly familiar. I just can't place him. The friend that experienced this with me is one of my most trusted friends, and he assures me to this day that even he didn't know who this man was. Our last story is from Monster Chick. This was about 4 or 5-ish years ago. Back then, I lived with my mother in a shed on a farm surrounded by woodland. Our farmland was part of a larger piece of farmland that was split up and sold off, so we did have neighbors. Though they were roughly half a kilometer, or a third of a mile, away from us. We loved that though because of the privacy. It wasn't like there was nobody nearby that I couldn't go to if I needed help. That thought is what had me fearlessly walking alone at night between the hours of 7 and 8 p.m. The time would sometimes fluctuate, from earlier to later depending on the day. Sometimes I even went out on a walk at 2 a.m. because I was restless and couldn't sleep. Looking back, this was incredibly ill thought, and after this incident, I never walked after 6 p.m. ever again, always making sure there was at least some sunlight left when I set out. The route I always took was a road circuit. The first part was in the open, in front of all of the other farms, including our own. If anything had happened, at least one person would have noticed, and reception was pretty good, so I would have also been able to call someone. The second half, on the other hand, was concealed by about 200 meters, or 218 yards, of woods between the farms and the back road, stretching the full 2 kilometers, or a little over a mile, at the back of the farm, and it was during that part of the walk when I had this creepy encounter. It was late at night. I can't remember what time exactly, but it was pitch black by then with the exception of my flashlight. I was about to approach the turn in the loop that would bring me out into the open again when I heard it.
Help. Help.
It was this monotone voice that repeatedly asked for help. It didn't seem panicked in the least. I took my headphones out and turned my music off to make sure that I was hearing it correctly, but it didn't stop.
Help. Help.
A part of me almost responded, because for some reason my first instinct was, oh no, somebody's in trouble, like a naive kid, even though I would have been around 16 or 17 at the time. Of course, then my brain kicked in, and I realized that approaching that voice was just about the stupidest thing I could do, so I started quietly backing away. Unfortunately, my cat had followed me on the walk and wasn't backing away with me. No, she was walking towards the voice, softly hissing. I remember desperately trying to get her to come back towards me without alerting the voice to my presence, just in case it hadn't noticed me yet. But I was getting scared and didn't want to stay there a moment more, so I ran forwards and grabbed my cat, then turned around and bolted back towards my house. I don't know if it was stupid to turn back and look at the voice, but I was making so much noise while running that there was no way they didn't know that we were there. And I had no way of knowing if they were giving chase. I was very terrified that whole time. The image entered my mind of someone cloaked in the shadows, chasing me, even though I couldn't hear anyone behind me. I never slowed down once until I was back safe and sound in my house. Doesn't end there, though. Despite how terrifying it was, there was still a part of me that was concerned about whoever it was. Because what if they had really needed help? So I asked my mom to drive us to that location. Another stupid decision considering what we found, that being nothing. We called out, but nobody answered. We didn't get out of our car though. Luckily, neither of us were that stupid. We drove home, having seen nothing and no one. But it still bothered me in the morning, so I had my mom drive us over again, and we searched the immediate area. Nothing. No indication that anyone had ever been there. There was nobody. When I say there was nobody, there was no body. Which admittedly was a drastic thing to search for, but it made me fear that we'd been too late and we'd find a body in the morning. I don't know if I would have preferred this outcome, because then at least I would have had a face to the voice. But no, we found absolutely nothing, and to this day, I have no idea who that voice belonged to and why they were monotonously calling out for help. My mind has naturally come to some chilling conclusions and theories that leave me unable to sleep. Imagine some sort of kidnapper or serial killer or worse. All of the classic horror stories. But I guess I'll never really know for sure. Thank you for listening to Whisperwood Stories. If you enjoyed, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe down below. Do you have a story that you'd like me to read here? Consider sending it to whisperwoodsubmissions@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening, and don't forget to check out the original Reddit posts. Don't let the shadows get too close.